We're live. We're live again, fresh off the injury podcast. Now I'm the host, Andrew Erickson. I'm on Twitter at Andrew Erickson _. I'm joined by not only PFF Jared Evans, but I'm also joined by Nathan Yonke, who just cannot stop taking in people's money on Thursday nights. Like, Nate, I need your address because we need to send you an air conditioner because you're on fire right now. Like, you need help. Like, we need to get the fire department over there. It's an issue, but glad to have you on to share your wisdom of these Thursday night takedowns. I guess is the best way to describe it. So for those that aren't familiar, make sure you follow Nate on Twitter and make sure that you're following his content. Like, he's just on top of everything right now. The articles, the rankings. Where are you in the Fantasy Pros rankings right now? You are in the top 10. Correct?
I am not. I fell to 12th place. I had a bad week. I went from 6 to 12. I'll get back there next week.
All right. There we go. I like to see it. I will not share where I am at. It's been a struggle so far this year. Working to get better every week, but my process is not sound enough. So working on that still. But before we get into the DFS talk, I just wanted to get Nate's thoughts on just that the format that he's playing. So he's playing on Underdog Fantasy, these single game drafts where, I mean, I really don't even know that really much how it works. So Nate, I'll give you the floor here to kind of just talk about the structure and kind of where your strategy is kind of bringing you to finding success.
Sure. So it's the single game Thursday night, Monday night games where their structure is you have 4 people on your team, only running backs, wide receivers, tight ends. So no quarterbacks, no defenses. And you have a 3-person draft. So you just join and 2 other people draft with you. So 12 picks total with 3 people and 4 people on the team. I took advantage of a couple of things early this week. With Jarvis Landry, it was uncertain if he was going to play, but on Tuesday, I was able to get him in the 4th round fairly consistently. So wherever I wanted him, based on whoever I had, I was happy to get him. And a lot of people really liked Demetric Felton for the Browns, so I knew Johnson was going to be the starter and going to be the guy, so I could consistently get him late as well. So basically anyone who did well this past week had him in the lineup. But I feel like I have an advantage in those for years of, at Pro Football Focus, marking down the players who's on the field, where they line up, being able to understand running back rotations, wide receiver rotations, tight end rotations. And in those competitions, it's good to know not just who the starters that are going to be doing well, but how often the backups will be seeing the field. And so, like, having an understanding of the game script, how I think the game will play out. And luckily, these last 2 games played out similar to how I thought they would. So, like, the week before, knowing that Leonard Fournette would be running a ton late in the game, I wanted to make sure to get plenty of Fournette. And that helped me win 2 weeks ago, where I made 2nd place this week, where if Jarvis Landry would have made 3 more yards, then things would have been a little different. But
what was the winning roster? So you had D'Ernest, Jarvis Landry. You didn't have any quarterbacks.
And then I had both the Broncos running backs were the other 2. They both scored touchdowns. And the person who won, same draft as me, only difference was they had Noah Fant instead of Landry.
Okay. So yeah, it was basically just like a fraction of yard. I mean, I think didn't Landry like limp off the field at the end of the game anyway? Like,
yeah. And he came back for like 1 play on 3rd and 7. So I'm like, and that was after a false start. I had already accepted, like, okay, the best I can do is get 2nd place because my guy's out. And then the false start happens, and I'm like, no, if the Broncos get the ball back, then any number of scenarios could have cost me plenty. So then I'm like, oh no, Landry's on the field. So lots of ups and downs, but it all worked out fine.
So would you recommend trying to draft early then in some of these? Because I don't think a lot of people think about that. I think that I would assume that most people just join on Thursday. They're like watching the game. They're like, oh, I want to draft a team. You know, I kind of do something similar with like showdown lineups. Like I build a showdown lineup just to kind of have fun, do some player props or whatever. So do you kind of like look to start early on some of these, like on a Tuesday, or just that's you do? Okay, cool.
I do, yeah, and I like it as well, just in that, like, in order to have multiple lineups, you have to actually go through and do the draft multiple times rather than just figuring out all these different lineups you're going to have. So if someone wants to have multiple lineups, they have to take the time to manually do one after one after one. So it's another thing I like about the format. And they also have something where you swap players out. So like any player, if I drafted someone on a Tuesday that was supposed to play, they end up inactive. then they swap it out for whoever is the best guy that you had in your rankings that was not drafted by anyone in your draft.
Oh, okay.
So
cool.
You don't have to lose out if someone. I think with Landry, it would have been different because he just wouldn't have been on the active roster, so he would not have been inactive. But in plenty of other cases where it's like an injury to whomever,
Okay.
they're pretty protected.
Yeah, so that's good then. So yeah, you don't take just a total 0 if you take a guy that's like on the fringe, and I think that's fair. So that's cool. All right, so yeah, guys, go make sure. I'm gonna start to play that. I'm gonna start draft on Tuesday, for whatever Thursday night game. It's Cardinals, and I don't know who they're playing. And it is Arizona though.
That's too far ahead.
Packers, baby, Cardinals, Packers.
Oh, right.
God, Jared knows. Jared knows. He's on the pulse.
Can we draft for Monday Night Football?
Yeah, I don't think it's up for Monday Night Football yet. I think that goes up tomorrow, but they will have a contest for Monday Night
Send out the Slack chat. Send it out in Slack. Hey, it's open. The floodgates. Let's get in there, PFF. All right, cool.
I loved your double running back strategy. A lot of times you can see that winning in Showdown too for teams that run the ball a lot. So like maybe Alex Collins and Rashad Penny on Monday. But I digress.
Especially like me living in Cincinnati, the game being in Cleveland, I could tell how windy it was just by walking outside, and I'm like, okay, yep, this is going to be hard to throw.
Weather advantage. Yeah, I love it.
And then knowing both quarterbacks were injured and one of them didn't play, so that also led me to want to draft running backs, knowing that the quarterbacks were both hurt on Tuesday.
Yes, the king of air yards did not have a spectacular game, unfortunately for Cortland Sutton. But we're going to move on, talk about the main slate. Thursday night is in the books. We're talking about bigger and better games, DFS, DraftKings. Guys, so 10-game slate, a little bit smaller than we usually see. So I think I do better on these slates where there is less players that I guess can like bury me, where I know like it's kind of like when you shorten the player pool a little bit, and I feel like kind of same way in Showdown, like you know more about each of the players than the field does a little bit more. So Jared, I'll start with you. I'll start with quarterback. Who are you kind of gravitating towards in tournaments this week? Who is your kind of guy that you like as someone you're going to build around?
Yeah, this slate just has some of the best offenses in the NFL, all against really crappy defenses. So I think it's going to be hard to pay like less than $6K for a quarterback and expect to be able to win a tournament. You have Stafford at home against the Lions, Aaron Rodgers at home against Washington, Brady at home against the Bears, Mahomes against the Titans. That game could shoot out. Kyler Murray against the Texans. Like all those guys are in such good spots that I think that is probably where you're going to want to direct your quarterback exposure. And then the other guys that kind of caught my eye, I was hoping that Jalen Hurts and that Eagles-Raiders game might go overlooked amongst all those other top offenses, but I was perusing ownership projections, and Hurts is like the second highest projected quarterback right now, which made 0 sense to me. But I thought he was interesting. Yeah.
The Eagles Hurts?
Yeah.
Because he runs, man. It's because people don't watch the games. They just watch the fantasy.
Nobody wants to play Jalen Hurts, though. I don't know. I'm curious to see if that comes down. And then, of course, I have to mention Ben Brown's favorite stack, because that guy is always on the money. He wrote up the Bengals and Ravens as a sneaky shootout game, and I doubt anybody plays Joe Burrow. And you know who to pair him with in Chase or T. Higgins or Boyd. So that's what I'm thinking for quarterback this week.
All right. I definitely greenlight the Joe Burrow call. I know Ian likes Joe Burrow, and Nate, I believe you like Joe Burrow as well. All right, PFF's on Joe Burrow. Let's go.
To add to Joe Burrow, I wrote about him in an article earlier this week. He is at an elite level when there's no pressure on him. He has a top 5 PFF grade, so I think he's getting pretty underlooked. And the Ravens don't have a great pass rush this year, so I think that's partially why, particularly in this matchup, I like Burrow, is that I don't think he's going to be under pressure that often. So he'll be able to definitely take advantage with how well he's playing.
All right. Is there any other quarterbacks, maybe ones that Jared didn't mention or ones that you like in particular for this slate?
I think I completely agree with the strategy of like a lot of the best quarterbacks are playing bad defenses, so you probably have to pay for one. So Hurts is someone, I think in that same matchup we just talked about, Lamar Jackson, I think will do fine against the Bengals defense. So those are two guys that if you're willing to pay for a quarterback are ones I'd look at.
So it's because I think that a lot of times we almost kind of not like trick ourselves, but we kind of buy into it. Oh, like I don't need to pay for Mahomes. Like I'll just play Ryan Tannehill. And then you're like, I got 15 points. Like, this isn't as good. Or like, because like that happens sometimes. Like Heineke got some steam last week and he was kind of like just like he didn't do it for you. And like that's, you check every winning roster of all these GPPs and it's always a more or less high price quarterback, whether it's usually at least 6.5K that their salary is at. And it's usually in the next week they're at 7K. So like Stafford was under 7K last week, had a monster game, and he got taken out in the fourth quarter with like 10 minutes left, and he still had a monster game. So I don't know if there's like a lot of buzz about, oh, well, Stafford, the Rams are going to score too many points. They're going to take out Stafford. Like, that's why you can't play him. Like, that's not something you want to get behind. And I think that the Lions, like Jared Goff, can maybe do enough to keep it somewhat competitive. It is a revenge game for him too, so he has a shot. And I mean, he's done that. He's done that at times this year. I mean, the Bengals game was close in like the first half until like things just kind of like totally got off the rails. So I think that that's a game I like. I like the Rams. I like Matthew Stafford. Like if I was playing one single entry, I would probably go with Stafford, Cup, and then just use Higbee or something like that, like a different combination. Maybe not even bring it back. So you don't always have to bring it back, especially when the other team is really fringy. Like we saw this last year where it was the Chiefs against the Jets, and everyone's like, all right, got to get Denzel Mims in there. It's just like, just don't get anybody in there from the Jets. Like there's a lot of other low salary players that it's not correlated necessarily, but you can correlate other parts of your lineup. So I think that those are the high price guys. I will admit though, I do kind of like Matt Ryan a little bit. The Dolphins are really banged up. They could miss the 3 starting cornerbacks. They could all be gone, and it's easy to stack him with Calvin Ridley and Kyle Pitts. Miami's defense has just not been nearly. It's kind of like Washington's defense of the AFC, where we thought Miami's defense was going to be good. Turns out not to be the case, and they're dealing with a lot of injuries. And I mean, look, Jared, you brought him up last week because Ben Brown talked about him, but if there's ever going to be a week where Justin Fields like does anything for fantasy, it has to be this week. It has to be this week for Justin Fields and this Bears offense.
Yeah, I'm all for that. I've been playing Justin Fields every week, so I gotta keep it going until it hits. I'm just lighting money on fire. But I think the smarter way to play that might be to do Brady plus Godwin and or Evans, and then bring it back with Allen Robinson or Darnell Mooney, rather than scraping the bottom of the Fields barrel. But he's so cheap, and I mean there are players that we want to pay up for. So you want to save salary in some place. Like I think the winning Millie Maker lineup last week had like a naked Baker Mayfield or Sam Darnold who got like 16 points. But that's only because no quarterbacks scored more than 30, I don't think, or maybe Kirk Cousins was the highest with like 30, but no quarterbacks separated from the rest of the pack. Whereas this week you have so many studs in such good matchups that the odds that someone gets 35 points is probably a lot higher than last week.
Yeah. Nate, do you have any thoughts on Fields?
Yeah, I actually really like him this week, along with all the injuries the Buccaneers have at cornerback. The Buccaneers are one of the defenses that play zone defense the most out of all teams, and Fields has played significantly better against zone defenses than man defenses. He has a PFF pass grade of 76.8 compared to 27.2. I know passer rating isn't the best metric, but it works just fine here. NFL passer rating of 86 against zone defenses, 1.5 against man defenses. So the splits are very clear, and Tampa Bay just runs a ton of zone defense, and with some backups in, they probably have to keep doing what they've been doing. So I like Fields this week.
Boom. Let's go, Justin Fields week. Bear down. Oh, cannot wait for that game. It's going to be great. He's running a little bit more. It's got it all there. Like, it just took a while for them to figure it out. So let's get Justin Fields into those DFS lineups. We're moving on to the running back position. Derrick Henry, 90, or what is he at, 9,100? He might be more expensive than that. He's plus 9,000. He's like in his own tier. Like pretty much he's in his own tier. Like, it's funny. I like pulled the graph of like expected fantasy points versus DraftKings salary in my DFS cheat sheet, and it's just like you have like all the players on one side, and you have like Derrick Henry all the way over here, just like breaking the freaking graph off the charts. So you're playing him in cash games, and whoever doesn't play him in cash games is just lighting their money on fire. Like there's no reason to think that the guy who's averaging 30 touches per game is not going to continue to produce. It's a great matchup. The Chiefs defense, PFF's 32nd grade run defense. It really doesn't even matter. Like the Bills like did everything the right way against Derrick Henry, and it didn't even matter. Like, so Jared, you are the the Fade the Chalk tournament guru here. What are you doing with Derrick Henry?
You can't play him this week, right? Like, like you just can't do it. It just doesn't make any sense from trying to win a tournament angle. Like, of course he can bury you, but that everybody's going to be so high on the Titans coming off that crazy win against the Bills last week. But like, this is a letdown spot for them. And the Chiefs, I feel like everybody's down on them, but they're still Patrick Mahomes and an awesome team. Like, what if the Chiefs just blow the Titans out the window? Like, that could totally happen. The Titans defense is atrocious. I think you have players like Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, Cooper Kupp, kind of similarly priced in that above 8K range. Like, play one of those guys at much lower ownership and hope that they're the one completely buries everybody else for not playing them at significantly less ownership.
Yeah, I think that, and I think what I try to do every single week is I go back and look at the winners of all the tournaments I played in and see like who they played to kind of get an idea of like, oh, like was I on this player? Did I just not have the right, I liked all these players. I just didn't have them all in the same lineup just to kind of get an idea. And, Derrick Henry's been kind of going off every single week. And if you look at a lot of winning lineups, like not every winning lineup has Derrick Henry in it. Like, so there are ways that you can get around. And I think that just, it's kind of not like lazy, but just to like automatically plug him in and be like, all right, well, I don't care about anything else. Like from a secure standpoint, yeah, that's why you play him in cash games because it's so locked and loaded. Like nobody probably has a higher floor, like a 25 point fantasy point floor than Derrick Henry does, especially because now that he's kind of seeing a little bit more usage in the passing game. So, but yeah, you can definitely get away from him because it's not even has to do with him. It just has to do with his price. Like he is so expensive that it makes it tougher to fit in all the other players. Like you mentioned, Jared, some of these receivers that are also in really, really good spots. And the fact that we do have a bunch of high-powered offenses playing bad defenses, like these are the games where we see the 40-point, even 50-point ceiling from some of these receivers. Like Tyreek Hill, we know Tyreek Hill's playing the worst defense in the NFL. Like he could put up 50 points, which will be better than Derrick Henry putting up 35 against the Chiefs. So I think that makes a lot of sense. Nate, do you kind of vibe with that as well?
Yeah, I think I'd be passing on Henry this week, but I do think you still want to pay for running backs. There's so many good ones that have bye weeks this week and so many injuries that have happened at running back that there's really not a ton of running backs that I like in general for the week. So I think paying for one, probably not paying $9,000 for one, but like Darrell Henderson, who has a great matchup against the Lions. We've seen their run defense for years now. And we know the game script is probably going to be whether or not it's a slight Rams win or a heavy Rams win, they're going to be giving the ball to Henderson a ton. So I think Henderson could be the highest scoring running back this week. Leonard Fournette, another guy facing Chicago, and how much he's taken a hold of the Buccaneers backfield, that game script similarly will be lots of running late and lots of running with Fournette.
Yeah, I think Henderson is the other cash game play, and you can play him in tournaments. He's going to be extremely popular, but you got to play some popular guys. Like you can't just play all contrarian players. And I think that Henderson, you could argue he has the same type of ceiling as Derrick Henry does, and he costs like literally almost $3,000 less than Henry, and he's going to also probably be just as popular because people are just going to pay up and see Derrick Henry's name and be like. It's really more like a fear than anything else. Like you're just playing Derrick Henry so you don't get mocked when he rushes for like 200 yards and like 3 touchdowns. You're like, oh, because it's like you're not fading him because you think he's a bad play. He's a great play. Like that's not the mindset behind it. You're just hoping he doesn't score like 50 points. You're just hoping he scores like 30 and then some of your guys score a little bit more. So I think that's really the process play on Derrick Henry. I guess not playing Derrick Henry in some of these tournaments. I like DeAndre Swift as well. He's at 6K. He's always been in the 6K range. And we're all talking about the game script for the Rams are going to get up big. This fits right into what Swift does. Like as a pass catching back, he always kind of finds a way to find the end zone or catch a bunch of passes. They're going to be playing from behind potentially in this game. I think that's what everyone thinks. So Swift is like, you could argue the best receiver on the Lions with Hawkinson. So I think Swift, his prices is still too low for a guy that's seeing the type of pass work volume, especially even just general snap share. Like he's seen it increase the last 2 weeks. They've not used Jamal Williams nearly as much. Jamal Williams has been banged up. So I think Swift makes a lot of sense in the 6K range. And then some other guys I like in that range as well. Cordero Patterson. I just think people don't know what to do with him. Like they're just kind of like, they have his receivers coming back, and it's really hard to like give him a projection. I know I've been kind of following his player props, and they're just all over the place. Like people are like they've opened up like 44 rushing yards, and it's down to like 33, and then it's back up again because it's just really hard to project him because we don't know how his role is going to change with Ridley and Gage back in the lineup or how often they'll feature him. Josh Jacobs and Chuba Hubbard, the other guys I like. Two guys that are their featured workhorses on their teams. Both have good matchups. The Eagles have not been a good rate run defense. They've been more of a kind of a run funnel, been better against the pass. So I think the Raiders might try to smarten up and run the football more. And then Hubbard has another good matchup against the New York Giants. So some of those other running backs I like in that 6K range. Jared, you're a little pixely, but can you give us your running back plays that you like, in the 6K range?
Yeah, you didn't talk about our Joe. He's last week.
Who is it? Your audio is coming in kind of choppy.
Yeah.
You might need to pop off and come back in. All right. Goodbye, Jared.
All right. While he's doing that, I'll give a running back slightly less than 6K. James Conner. Similar situation where the game script's going to be absolutely amazing. Arizona against Houston. They're supposed to win by at least like 17 points. So Connor's been playing more when Arizona's winning, where not so much when they're losing. Not that they've been losing all that often. And also looking at the run concepts, Arizona just kind of does the same thing all the time, just lots of inside zone. But Houston hasn't been able to stop inside zone runs at all this season. So even though the defense will know what's coming, they haven't been able to stop it. So I could see Connor getting a ton of touches and being able to be effective on his touches more so than he's able to in plenty of other matchups.
Yeah, it's so weird seeing Chase Edmonds and James Conner have the same price because I'm like, I know that like James Edmonds has the more explosive profile, and he's leading the league in yards per carry. He's tied with Tony Pollard, but I also know he also got taken off the injury report. So yeah. I like the call on Conner, and it's just like you really just want the Arizona Cardinals running back that's going to like face the Texans defense, and I think it's important to just look at the roster ship projections and take into note if Connor's like double the amount of Edmonds, okay, then maybe you do go with an Edmonds play in a tournament that's a large field or something like that just to get leverage off the field. Because it's like both guys are both great spots, and we've seen Edmonds' workload decrease the last couple weeks. But is that because he's been hurt? Last week he barely even played in the second half. They just gave the ball to James Conner, and so. But I do like the call, and James Conner makes a lot of sense. Jared,
and even if he's good to go, Edmonds, in the fourth quarter, if he's 90% rather than 100%, if they're up by 3 scores, then why have him on the field? Why not just give him the rest? So That's another reason why, just like Connor in this one.
Yep. No, totally makes sense. Jared, is he back in the stream? He's loading. Jared, you're loading still. All right. Until I see his face pop up in the little window, we'll leave him out there until he comes back. Other running. Oh, so okay. So I have to say that my favorite, probably low-priced running back is Miles Sanders. He's at 5.1K. He's dropped significantly. I know we've already got the coach speak now. Nick Sirianni coming out and saying, "All right, we're going to get more carries for Miles Sanders." All right, I already thought that anyway, but now that I have confirmation bias in my backhand, of course I'm going to pull it out. We've seen the snap share increase for Miles Sanders. Miles Sanders had 83% snap share last week against the Buccaneers, and he was ripping off explosive runs. He was over 50 rushing yards against the Bucs. 50 rushing yards in a vacuum doesn't look impressive, but when you do it against Tampa Bay, you're like, oh my God, 50 rushing yards? Zeke could do that. Damien Harris rushed for -1 yards against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So I think they're starting to realize that, hey, they've gone away from Kendrick Gainwell a little bit, and it's been 2 weeks. So I think it is more of a trend than just kind of like a abnormality. Where, we saw Miles Sanders because I was buying into Kenneth Gainwell during the start of years. He's getting all the pass game work. Has not been the case the last couple of weeks. So I think that the matchup is really good. The Raiders are tied with the Texans, 29th in the league in explosive rushes allowed over the last 4 weeks. And Miles Sanders is due for touchdown regression. No player has more carries inside the 5-yard line than Sanders this season without a goal line rushing score. So touchdown regression, you have the matchup that's favorable, and kind of a fade off of a chalky Jalen Hurts, because if Miles Sanders is scoring these rushing touchdowns, then it's not Hurts that's scoring them, and that's kind of what drives a lot of his fantasy production when it comes on the ground. So I think Miles Sanders is probably my favorite. I didn't think you can play him in cash games because he is so cheap, but I like Miles Sanders at 5.1K price tag. Nathan, Are there any other running backs you like? You mentioned Edmonds,
Yeah,
James Conner. It gets kind of gross in this area, but is there anyone else you like?
Yeah, I'll mention J.D. McKissick for Washington. I know Antonio Gibson speed up, and if Gibson doesn't play, then I expect lots of people to be going with McKissick. But even if Gibson does play against the Packers, they'll need to be passing plenty, and McKissick's the passing back. And yeah, Gibson's been seeing an increased role in general this season, but if he's hurting, then McKissick could see a lot of the role that he's used to have the pass roll back. So I could see him throwing to McKissick plenty in this game with them being behind.
Nate, you're nailing the game scripts has been working for you in this underdog tournament. So I can see you building 2 running backs. You go James Conner, JD McKissick. Like they're the game script running backs that in their favor where, if the Cardinals are up, which they should be, James Conner is going to smash. And if the football team is down against the Packers, like they should be, it should be JD McKissick season. So and if it doesn't work out, then whatever. It doesn't matter.
And you try again next week.
Exactly. Try again next week. But yeah, I think it does make sense to chase a little bit of game script. And again, this is a one tournament in season-long leagues. It's like when you're drafting, it's always a little bit more sketchy. I know we talked about, like football team's going to have a good defense, and that's why Fitzpatrick won't throw as much. And then it was a total reversal, and it's like the total reversal with Dallas, where we thought they would have a bad defense, and they have a good defense. So from a season-long perspective, it's usually not good to go into narratives like that. But during a one-game sample size, it's like, hey, like you got to build your lineup around that type of story, that type of narrative. We will be getting Jared back in here, so I don't want to leave the running back conversation quite just yet. I mentioned J.D. McKissick in my article as well. Again, 61% snap share last week, 16 touches. And I guess the last guy I'll mention, probably the cheapest guy I'll play, is Michael Carter for the New York Jets. We saw him really start to separate a little bit more from Ty Johnson in the last game that they played. He got the start. He was seeing a lot of goal line touches. Tevin Coleman is injured, and he only played like a 9% snap share last week. So Michael Carter at 4,800. I think it makes sense to stack with like the Jets defense as a super cheap stack. And we see the rookie bump sometimes when guys come off the bye weeks. It could be the Elijah Moore and Michael Carter show. Patriots are a run funnel defense. Teams are running the football against them. So they, it would do them some justice to try to protect Zach Wilson a little bit, give him a decent run game to kind of help him out a little bit so he's not forced to throw to the Patriots and get 4 interceptions again, hopefully. Hopefully not, but...
Yeah, the Jets are a team where they want to run the ball. If you look at how much they've been running the ball in different situations, whether they have a lead or are tied or are down by a little bit, they're running more than every other team. It's just they're constantly down by a lot, so then they have to pass the ball, where if the Jets can stay close in this one, Carter's been clearly the rushing back the last couple weeks, so he would get plenty of touches if the Jets can just keep it close against the Patriots.
All right, Jared, you're back into the live stream now that you've rebooted. We've already hit on every great running back play, so if you don't mention the same ones we talked about, then you're wrong. Jared, your running backs, and we lost you after I started. I mentioned Hubbard, Jacobs, and Patterson, and then you said something, and I just couldn't hear you. So start up where you were there.
Well, I joined in and heard you talking about Michael Carter. I love that as
cool.
as a tournament call, because the Jets are coming out of their bye, and what have they been working on this last week? Maybe trying to get these rookies more involved. That's at least
get
how
the
I'm
ball
trying.
to Ty Johnson.
No, but running back is kind of gross this week after the really popular guys, and that's also how I'm trying to justify myself to play Elijah Moore based on that same logic. So I like that call. Chuba Hubbard is the guy that I wrote up in my weekly article. Panthers road favorite, and the Giants are really banged up. So I like that call. Did you talk about Antonio Gibson at all?
I did not. Nate talked about J.D. McKissick.
Yeah, Gibson I thought would be kind of interesting to include in Devontae Adams rosters, because the Packers are not really a team that's going to just throw the football when they're up 3 scores late in the game. But if Washington randomly jumps out to an early lead, I think that they would be more likely to run the ball with Gibson, and maybe he broke a long run, and then the Packers are going to be stuck passing and keeping their foot on the gas pedal with Devontae Adams, and that's how he gets one of his 14, 15, 16 target games where he ends up breaking the slate. And then nobody's going to play Gibson because of these injury problems, and he's cheap, so he only needs 100 yards and a touchdown kind of pay off. So I thought that pairing Gibson with Packers is kind of an interesting contrarian strategy.
What's Gibson's price at?
5,900.
5,900. Yeah. And that makes sense. And it goes with the certain scenario you're talking about, because in both cases, like McKissick can work in a certain lineup and Gibson can work in a certain lineup. So they both are good plays. It just depends on how you're building around them. I mean, there's going to be some points in this game. So I think that makes a lot of sense. Is there any other running backs that you haven't mentioned? 6K. Is there anyone else you're gravitating towards? I know you said you like Michael Carter. Anyone else that you need to get off your chest before we move to wide receivers? Jared, it's your last chance.
Joe Mixon was the other guy that I was kind of interested in, just because he's been balling out every week. I mean, he's just playing well. He's getting fed. He's a workhorse, and running back is tough this week, and nobody's going to play him. So I'm on board with Mixon.
It's always a Joe Mixon week. Every single week's a Joe Mixon week. All right, wide receivers. I have now found I'm calling them the alpha tier, because I think it's pretty clear who the top 3 receivers are. It's Tyreek Hill, it's Cooper Kupp, it's Davante Adams. I will start with you, Jared. One of these 3 receivers, you can only play one. Who would it be? The floor is yours.
This feels like a Davante Adams break the slate week. I mean, just look at his last 4 games. So he went for 34 against the 49ers, then 12, and he went for 40 and then 12. So like,
so
he's probably going for 50 this week. Just like simple math right there. But no, Washington's defense is terrible. The Packers are at home. Aaron Rodgers has been an assassin playing in Lambeau, and he's 8,900, so you get a little bit of a discount off what he was last week. And he's the same price of just about as Derrick Henry. So it's going to be really tough to play them both in the same lineup. It's kind of like a one or the other. So give me Davante of the trio, or you could even play multiple of them, which is
always hedge and play multiple. And that's always the correct answer. But Nate, do you have a take on Adams, Kupp, or Hill as one of your favorites?
I'm agreeing with Adams. I think one with Tyreek Hill, he's not 100%, so that's the only reason that I might shy away from him. And then I just like the matchup with Adams a little bit better than I do with Kupp.
Yep. Yeah, you play Adams in cash. Adams and Henry in cash, and then you just try to punt everything else and try to move on and figure out where to save salary. I agree. You cannot fade the receiver with a 34% target share. The number 1 in the league. Like, it's absolutely bonkers how high it is. Like, Rodgers doesn't throw it to anyone else. Like, Lazard is running wind sprints. Like, he scored the rushing touchdown last week. He's like, no, he doesn't even get a target. It doesn't matter. Like, he gets a carry to score his touchdown. So, yeah, the Randall Cobb renaissance has not played out like we all thought.
Although, you know who brought up Alan Lazard?
Do not talk about Robert Tonyan here.
No. Our good friend Ben Brown was on Lazard this week as a cheap punt.
I like that. He is running a lot of routes,
yeah,
and he did score a touchdown last week, so I can get behind that.
Yeah, so the strategy would be to be like, build a Cooper Kupp lineup with Alan Lazard or a Tyreek Hill lineup with Alan Lazard, because you're basically betting that one of those 2 receivers is going to outscore Davante Adams.
I mean, I actually think that, let's be honest, like when Cobb had that huge week, he was literally stealing targets away from Davante. like Cobb is like defense against Adams. Like, that's how you want to play to stop Adams from catching touchdowns, because it's going to be like a target to Adams, and then Cobb is just going to like jump out, catch it, and he'd be like, what? Actually, Nate, I had a question about this in terms of PFF collection. So when there's a target that looks like it's going to some other player and the other player catches it, does that player still get the target and the other guy gets the reception? I was kind of wondering that. I wasn't sure if
it's the guy who catches the ball that gets the target. Ideally, we would be able to separate the 2, but we have not come up with that yet.
I don't think anyone's going to hold that against us. And that we like.
I hold it against us.
It's like, well, technically he didn't get the target, but he did catch the pass. So, okay, cool. So outside the alpha tier, moving down to below 8K, between 8K and 6K. I mean, the ones that stuck out to me, I thought that there were a lot of really nice plays here. The ones that kind of point out to me, Ridley, DJ Moore, AJ Brown, and Brandon Cooks, just kind of looking at their roles in their offenses, clear alphas, really high target shares, good matchups. I like Ridley a lot. We haven't seen Ridley really pop off yet this year, but we started to see Matt Ryan play a little bit better. They're coming off the bye week. Miami's banged up in the secondary. He's really, this is a guy we thought could be the wide receiver 1 overall in season-long leagues, and he's down at 6,600. So I like Calvin Ridley a lot. I think DJ Moore bounces back. Not Robbie Anderson bounce back week. It's DJ Moore bounce back week. And AJ Brown, The Chipotle is out of the system. Do not get the smoked brisket. I've had it. It's not good. It's not good. Do not buy it. I didn't get sick, but it didn't taste very good. So hashtag Team Qdoba or just other Mexican restaurants. Sorry if your Chipotle is watching this. It's just like, you can't do that to AJB.
There goes that sponsorship possibility, and there goes that sponsorship possibility.
Come on, man. Like, do they watch the best ball drafts this summer? Like my second round best ball AJB teams are not doing super hot right now. So those are the receivers that stuck out to me. Do you guys have any takes on any of those guys or any other receivers in this middle tier range that you kind of like?
I'll say with go ahead.
Go with Nate. Nate, you start.
Okay. I will say with DJ Moore, I definitely agree that he'll have a bounce back week. He had like 3 drops last week, which is very uncharacteristic. He had 3 drops over his last 14 games prior to that game. So drops are typically not an issue with him. So that's probably just a one-time thing. He'll be back. I like Jamar Chase this week. Like we were saying before with the Bengals and how Joe Burrow should have a good week and plays well when there's no pressure on him, and he shouldn't have much pressure on him. So I really like all 3 of the Bengals wide receivers, but Chase is the top one of the 3. So definitely like him. And then Mike Evans is another player that stands out to me with Antonio Brown not playing in the game. So that'll help the other wide receivers. And it's a pretty good matchup against Chicago.
Yeah, the thing with Chase is it's really hard to envision Burrow having like a ceiling game with Chase not being involved because of just the deep threat. Like if Burrow's going to throw for 4 touchdowns, like he's probably going to hit Chase for like a 75-yard touchdown. Like that's probably going to happen. And Chase has just been doing it all with efficiency this year, like not even on the high target volume. So I think it's really hard to get away from Chase. Like I kind of look at it like, I'm like, do I do a Boyd, Higgins, Burrow stack? I'm just like, I just like can't like wrap my mind around that because I'm like, if Burrow has like a sick game, like Chase is going to have to be involved. It'd be so weird for him not to be involved. But yeah, I like that call on Chase. Jared, thoughts?
I think that the 2 Bucs receivers, Evans and Godwin, are just clearly the best plays on this slate with Antonio Brown missing. I almost am thinking about any lineup I build using one of those guys or your boy Tyler or your boy Tyler Johnson, because it condenses the target share so much. And one of these guys at least has been going off in just about every single Bucs game this year. And now you take one of them out. So all those targets are probably going to go to Godwin and Evans. So it just makes the things that you have to guess right in your lineup a lot smaller than it normally would be. So I think that is a smart way to play it. And then honestly, so with the report that Julio, his hamstring kind of feels okay, is he like the best GPP play on the entire slate? Because if he like has his Julio 200-yard eruption game, he wrecks every Derrick Henry lineup. And apparently people are now like on AJ Brown, which I am dumbfounded about, but like his ownership is going to be like in the top 10 or 8, even among receivers, but nobody's going to want to play Julio. And we've seen him time and time again break slates with bum hamstrings because he always has a bum hamstring. So that's nothing new for him. So I think just from like a strategy angle, like Julio is just a phenomenal play in this 6K range. And then if you're not playing Cooper Kupp, then Robert Woods makes sense just from like a leverage perspective. But I think otherwise we hit on everyone.
Dude, I think I'd rather just play Van Jefferson or Deshaun Jackson. Yeah. Like, dude, Robert Woods had 3 targets for Matthew Stafford last week. 2 of his targets came with John Wolford at quarterback. Like, he's just not involved at all in that offense. He's literally his purpose is to like get Cooper Kupp open.
Yeah, and he didn't bitch this week, which was the only reason he got the 15 targets on that one.
And he's still like scoring touchdowns. So like he's like still like getting his like contributions. Like, all right, it's like Sean McVay can be like, Robert Woods can't complain. It's like, dude, like you keep scoring touchdowns, man. Like you're getting the ball enough, but Cooper Kupp's got to get his 15 targets. It's bonkers. So yeah, I didn't mention the Bucs stuff because I didn't write up I didn't know Antonio Brown was going to be out. I was reading off my DFS cheat sheet. Yeah, so Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. Chris Godwin's priced down at 5,900. I think that he's pretty much a lock in cash. I would try to get him in. He's a little more expensive than some of the other 5K receivers, obviously at 5,900. But I would look at that like Devontae Parker, Devonta Smith, Sterling Shepard. But now Shepard's like banged up. Allen Robinson's super fringy because we don't know if he'll have a breakout game or not. So in cash, like you got to find a way to get Godwin in. Like we've seen, he's so due for a breakout, like just based on the usage he's gotten, the end zone targets that he's gotten. Like he keeps getting tackled at like the 5-yard line. It's just, he's going to have a big game. And it just seems like, oh, now that Antonio Brown is out, like the number one, like, or second in the NFL in target rate per route run, it's like Godwin and Evans, just the targets are going to all be there for them. And I wasn't even really like on Brady that much in this either, as well as like a quarterback, but like you mentioned, Jared, because now we know exactly where the ball is going. It's like you kind of have to play a Brady lineup because it's like, yeah, it's like the Bears. Like, okay, like their defense is, it's okay, but it's not like a barn burner. And Brady's just so good. He can beat basically any defense. And this is like, it's never going to be this easy to like look at the stack because there's no Gronk or Brown. So we like know exactly, okay, it's going to be these guys. I mean, Tyler Johnson is so cheap. Anyway, you could just add him to and just do a triple stack. You know, Brady throws the ball enough where he can get 3 guys there easily, and you just play all the Bucs receivers and you bring it back with A-Rob. Allen freaking Robinson, who I guess I'll just hit on him. Look, it's the same thing. Like he's getting a ton of these high value targets in this offense. He 4th in the NFL in target share. I know that it's not really translate to actually a lot of real targets, but this is the spot. Like we're seeing everything with this Bucs. When teams play the Buccaneers, we just see abnormal offensive performances. We get these like weird like Zeke game where he just does nothing. We see a Gaskin 10 target game. Like just like really abnormal stuff happens because the Bucs defense is so unique compared to the rest of the NFL that they take offenses out of their comfort zone, which means the Bears are going to have to throw the football. And that means Allen Robinson is going to get volume. And that was the play behind him in best ball leagues and season long, why we drafted him like the 3rd round, because he was going to get volume. And I think he'll get it in this matchup. So Allen Robinson, I like, and it makes a lot of sense. You talked about playing a Bucs receiver in every single lineup. Boom, there's your bring back, Allen Robinson, and it's basically on the same play with Mooney too. They are seeing very similar usage. Mooney's actually running more routes. I think in the wide receiver cornerback matchup chart, we do have Robinson facing more of Pierre Desir. I don't know if it's like significantly enough, but Jamal Dean is good. Pierre Desir is like a guy that literally just signed, who's replacing Richard Sherman, who was not good when he was playing. So, yeah, I like Allen Robinson. Nate, other receivers that you like in this range?
So, yeah, I want to stick with that matchup. I do like Mooney in this one. I'm looking at the zone versus man defense stuff I was talking before with Fields. Mooney has very similar splits. His yards per route run more than doubles when he faces zone defenses compared to when he faces man defenses. His PFF grade shoots up significantly, and that's without a major change in target share. So I definitely like Mooney in this one. I think this could be his biggest breakout game.
Boom. Jared, your pick slated again. And frozen, potentially. Well, he did leave us with a great call to the Tampa Bay receivers, so maybe that's his call to card. Jared, you there? You might need to reboot again. I don't know why this keeps happening. This is also not the first time this has happened. This has happened multiple times, but all right, Nate. I guess we'll just talk about some of these. We'll move down a little bit. Some of these cheaper receivers. So you mentioned the Bengals receivers like Boyd and Higgins. I also like those guys. Darnell Mooney mentioned as well. Makes a lot of sense. So I guess we'll just talk about like the sub 4K guys, and really it's Rashad Bateman. So Rashad Bateman's getting a ton of steam, and I think he makes a lot of sense. Yeah, from a salary standpoint, 3,400. He's playing in a high-scoring game environment with a more pass-happy Ravens offense that is now down to their 4th-string running back. I don't imagine they're going to go into this match and be like, we got to pound the rock with Devontae Freeman or Le'Veon Bell or Tyson. So are you buying like the ownership that's kind of gravitating towards Rashad Bateman? Do you think it makes sense?
Yeah, I think he's definitely the best one. If you want someone under 4,000, he's definitely the one to go with. The only one that I consider like close to him in that range is Van Jefferson. Like we were talking about with the Lions matchup, Jefferson is seeing the field a ton. So yeah, his targets have been inconsistent, but this is a matchup where I think he could see a decent number of targets.
Yeah, and I think it's just smart to play Bateman. You know, Bateman's gonna be really chalky. You know, I have a tag running here that says Rashad Bateman chalky because he's gonna be very popular. But there are a lot of pivots that you can get off of him just to kind of vary your exposure. I think in cash games, it just makes sense to play him because if he puts up a 25 fantasy point performance, you're gonna get buried if you don't play him. But what I've learned kind of doing a lot of the DFS cheat sheet every single week is I list off all of these sub 4K wide receivers every single week. And then I go back and review the ones that hit. And there's like sometimes like none of them hit. Like they just have very low hit rates. That's why they are priced where they are, like because they have very low hit rates. So very exposure, don't say that I just know it's going to be this one and just like play every lineup that you have with them, just because that's not how it usually works out. So if you play one, yeah, I think Bateman is the choice, but Van Jefferson makes a lot of sense. Deshaun Jackson, like the Lions just scream big plays. Like that's all Deshaun Jackson does. Like, yeah, he's not running a lot of routes and it's super fringy of a play, but we know Deshaun Jackson is actually similar to the Devontae Adams thing that Jared mentioned. The pattern is like Deshaun Jackson big weeks happen on, I think it's odd numbered weeks of the schedule. So Deshaun Jackson potentially has a big game coming up. Again, it's just hoping he catches like a 75-yard touchdown, which we know is well within his range of outcomes. And maybe it's literally the first play of the game. It's like, yep, we're going to do play action off the right tackle, hit Deshaun Jackson deep in Ford Field, or excuse me, it's in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
So, homecoming for D-Jax in LA. Tyler Johnson is the other guy. I know we've talked about him. He's 3K, filling in for Antonio Brown. He's gotten 6 targets every single week he got 6 targets in week 3 when he was filling in for Antonio Brown. That was with Scotty Miller also playing in that game. Scotty Miller is still on injured reserve, so he's not coming back. So the number 3 role should be clear to Tyler Johnson, and he plays in the late game. So you can watch Rashad Bateman potentially flame out and know you have Tyler Johnson waiting in the wings to potentially bail you out and leap over however many points Rashad Bateman scores with Tyler Johnson. So I like Tyler Johnson a lot. I even like him in like season-long leagues. It's something you can pick up. Jared, any of these 4K wide receiver, or I know that we lost you. If there's anyone else below 6K that you like in the 5K range, or we are talking about some of these cheap receivers below 4K.
Yeah, so on the Rashad Bateman chalk week, I like Marquise Brown as kind of the leverage against that. He has been smashing all season long. Didn't have a good game last week, but the Ravens didn't have to do anything through the air, and maybe they do this week. And Hollywood Brown probably should be about $1,000 more expensive than he is. And so I like him. The Bateman thing is interesting. I'm surprised. I'm shocked that he's so popular. Like I played him last week and it didn't work out, but it was clearly a sharp play from like a process perspective, right? Given that he like led the team in targets. So I'm happy with myself for that, but I wouldn't want to play him at ridiculously high ownership because there are so many ways that play could fail. The touchdowns could go to Mark Andrews or Hollywood Brown. The running backs can do it. Lamar Jackson can do it. It just it doesn't make any sense that the field is so confident in a rookie receiver who hasn't done anything yet. And I love his talent. I have a ton of him in fantasy leagues everywhere and best ball and such. And I'm really bullish on him this year and the future, but this would not be the week to play him. I would rather take a shot on the other rookies who are going to be featured this week, like De'Ami Brown, where we don't have any Curtis Samuel or Cam Sims this week. So maybe he happens to pop off for a big game at like 2% ownership, or Elijah Moore. What if the Jets decide to get him more involved after the bye week? Like it's a terrible matchup against the Patriots, but think about what Belichick's going to try to do in defense. He's going to go with Corey Davis and then force Zach Wilson to go somewhere else with the football, which is probably going to be to Crowder and more. So like maybe he pops off at 2%. So that's kind of where my head's at on the cheap receiver tier this week.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a ton of sense. You got to be strategic with Rashad Bateman. I mean, like, what's his actual ceiling going to be? Like, you don't need to necessarily jam him into everywhere. He can't coming out. I think that I don't know what we had him as our comp in the rookie scouting portfolio, but I know that one that I like is like Keenan Allen, like as a guy who's a possession receiver, great route runner, but not someone that you necessarily look at. I mean, Keenan Allen like doesn't have like a ton of like massive. I mean, he's a target hog. Like he just demands starting. That's what we saw him do. Like we didn't see him make big plays in that game. We saw him catch a bunch of balls and get a bunch of targets, but we weren't like seeing him run downfield. And like that's really what they use Marquise Brown for. I think that actually his role as a more possession receiver actually makes it more likely that we see Marquise Brown run more routes downfield and see lighter coverage. So I mean, I think from a ceiling perspective, Marquise Brown probably has a higher ceiling than Rashad Bateman does, even if he has fewer targets. And I mean, Marquise Brown was like inches away from catching a touchdown from last week as well. I'm pretty sure Marquise Brown leads the NFL in end zone targets. So the touchdown upside is there, and I think that makes a lot of sense, Jared, to pivot to Mark. And it's not like Marquise Brown's been like bad this year. It's like you're playing a good player. Like, this is the thing. Like, you want to play low rostered players that are good. Like, there's plenty of low roster players that are bad. Like, it's not hard to find those guys. Like, the focus should not be to just play a low roster player because he's low roster. You want to play them because they're a good play and they're low rostered. So look for the good plays first, and then look at the roster projections, which are over on PFF.com. We've lost Jared again. All right, let's get through tight ends really quick. I think it's pretty simple. Travis Kelce is obviously something that you can pay out for. I think from the middle tier, like Kyle Pitts, Dallas Goedert, I think is underpriced based on his new role with Zach Ertz now in Arizona. Tyler Higbee, you kind of capitalize on touchdown equity in that Rams. I mean, we've seen Tyler Higbee have 3 touchdown games. So if he catches all the touchdowns and you have Matthew Stafford, you beat all the Cooper Kupp lineups, you beat all the Darrell Henderson lineups. Like, I think Higbee is a really great way to try to. I think that's probably my favorite stack, is doing like a Stafford, Higbee, Cooper Kupp stack, and just trying to capitalize on the touchdown equity, getting away from some of the chalk, obviously with Darrell Henderson, who again is still in a great play, but if the passing touchdown, if it's all through the air, I mean, you can even stack Henderson with Matthew Stafford. I don't even think he caught a touchdown last week, so I think that's an interesting play on the Rams offense. And the low owned, I think Cole Kmet's probably my favorite low owned guy. He's just running a ton of routes. We expect the Bears to have an uptick in passing. He's my cash tight end. I think you can play in like 50-50s. And the Buccaneers have not been good against tight ends. 3rd most receptions allowed to the position. Cole Kmet, 3K. And they start Jimmy Graham. So, my one reservation of like, oh my God, Jimmy Graham's going to freaking rob a red zone touchdown. Like, he's not there. So it's just that one last piece of the puzzle is like, all right, yes, Cole Kmet. No, Jimmy Graham, here we go. Nate, tight ends. How are you looking at the tight ends in the slate?
Yeah, I definitely largely agree with most of the things you said there. I'd go Goddard, especially. I like that matchup. The Raiders, 3 of the last 4 weeks have allowed some of the most fantasy points to tight ends. Top 4 tight end 3 of the past 4 weeks. A similar thing which I was talking about with the Bears with zone versus man defenses. Goddard's been playing better against zone, and the Raiders play a lot of zone defense. And then to add a cheaper tight end, O.J. Howard, someone I like, especially with the injuries the Buccaneers have. I could see at least a slight uptick in 2 tight end sets. And Howard, they were last week like making an effort to get him the ball, of like plays designed to get him, and that worked for them last week. So I could see them again trying to get him the ball a number of times this week. So I think he's my favorite cheaper tight end, but I'd probably be willing to spend at least a little bit more at the position to get someone like Goddard or Higbee.
Nice. Love it. Love the tight ends. Always a favorite position. Now move to DST. I think that the lowest you can actually go to, I talked about this on the injury podcast with Ian, is actually the football team. If you look at PFF's O-line, D-line matchup chart, Washington actually ranks as a top 5 advantage this week in terms of pressure, because I know that their defense has not been good, but you're still pressuring the quarterback. They're still bringing pressure, and the Packers are without 2 starting offensive linemen. Like, they're out with 2 guys. So we've seen Rodgers in games where he gets pressured and things kind of just like fall apart. And the football team, give them credit, as bad as they've been on defense the last 3 weeks, 5 fantasy points, 6 fantasy points, 8 fantasy points at 2,200. Like, they're scoring fantasy points, and there's no way on God's green earth I would ever pay up for $5,000 for the Rams DST when it's the same price as Jared Goff, number 1, which is just like a total slap in the face that the DST you're playing is the same price as you on DraftKings, just number 1. And number 2, you can just play the Cardinals defense at 3,100 against Davis Mills. Like, I don't know what they were. I don't know if they were just like, yo, revenge game, like Rams D, like all the way up price. It's like ridiculous how expensive they are.
Oh, yeah, I agree with you. Like, I think the Cardinals are probably going to be the highest scoring defense this week. But if you want to go cheaper than that, just to throw another name into the mix, I think the Eagles defense will do just fine against the Raiders offense. The problems the Raiders have had with their offensive line, I think the Eagles can take advantage of. So if you're looking for a cheaper option, that's probably the one that I would go with.
Yep. And then if for some reason you need even more cheap, 2,100 Tennessee Titans, no one's going to play them because people are going to be stacking the Chiefs. But what we see a lot of the times in these shootout environments is just like there's just weird stuff that happens. Like there's like turnovers that just happen in these games. Mahomes, I know it's not all his fault. He's had a lot of weird plays, but he does rank second in the NFL in interceptions. Like I know that a lot of it's like not on him. It's like drop passes and fluky plays, but it is happening to him. So just gotta keep things in mind. Some of it is on him. Like he's done some stuff that's kind of been a little like weird, like that. It was on that botched snap that he had, and he just kind of like threw it up in the air. I was like, dude, like what are you doing? A little Jameis Winston, sprinkled into Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
You're not playing the Titans defense because they're going to like smash or anything, but you're just hoping that a game where there's a lot of pass attempts. Again, like we love Derrick Henry, and you play Derrick Henry with the Tennessee Titans DST. Like that's an interesting defensive running back stack that I don't think a lot of people will play. So if you are playing Derrick Henry, maybe that's how you get a little bit contrarian with him in your lineup, because obviously he's going to be super popular. But all right, Nate, well, that's going to do it for us on the DFS mainstream overview. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, no problem.
I'm basically replacing Jared because Jared is just off the grid right now because of his internet. So I appreciate you coming in, tagging in. Tell the people where they can find you, and give me your lock. You can either like lock of the week, or like one player you're just like very, very confident, or like a stack that you're like, this is my stack that I want.
Sure. First off, where you can find me on Twitter, PFF_Nate Yankee. That's NATEJAHNKE. And I think I'm going to stick with Mooney. I think he's going to have a big game against the Buccaneers with that zone defense and with all those cornerbacks starting.
Boom. Love it. Absolutely love it. I'm going to do with my stack. I mentioned it a little bit earlier. So Stafford, Tyler Higbee, Cooper Kupp, maybe throw some Darrell Henderson in there. Probably won't bring it back. Maybe I'll dabble in some Khalif Raymond, or if I'm feeling frisky, Kadarrell Hodge, one of these dudes. I don't know. It's super fringy because I'm not sure if I'm going to bring it back. It might just be Rams onslaught, and then you want to make sure you have one of these Buccaneers receivers. I think that's one of the big things. You want to have a Bucs receiver, and then it makes sense because you can then stack him with Darnell Mooney or Allen Robinson. I think that's kind of how you want to attack that Bears-Bucs game, and there's a lot of options. There should be a lot of passing attempts in that game. So that's Nathan Yankee. I'm Andrew Erickson. Thank you for watching. Make sure you tune in every single week where we do the DFS stream. Check us out over on pff.com, all the written content. Make sure you give us all a follow on social media, on Twitter. I'm on TikTok, Andrew Erickson _. Tons of fun. I'm also on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio from 3 to 5 Saturdays, and from 7 to 9 on Sundays, doing the game day edition with my co-host Brian Drake. So again, thank you all for watching. Enjoy your Friday night. Get ready for Sunday. No London game this week, so everyone gets to sleep in, you West Coasters. I've been up watching those games, so it'll be nice to sleep in and get